there is another new Le Mans Ultimate DLC drop. This time we've got the Alpine, the Isotta Fraschini, and Circuit of the Americas. So we're just going to be jumping in, doing some laps in those, testing out. I'm excited for this. Here we are down into T1 at COTA. Oh my god, this thing is blind, and we're on the cold tires of the hypercars and everything. Of course, they just did the race IRL here, which was a pretty good one. It's like, what, that's 3 weeks ago by the time this update is dropping. So it's pretty recent. Oh man, this is... just getting used to the Le Mans Ultimate driving physics again after just doing a race in iRacing in the weekend. Over the curves here, we just use them. Of course, the S section at this track. Really good section. Like, the corner combination of the S's, in my opinion, is probably one of the better corner combinations. At least in, like, America, if you can say it like that. Now, this is a very technical track, COTA, right? Because you've got that corner combination, the flowing sweeps, down to this hairpin, and this next upcoming section we've got coming up is super, super technical, right? Because it's like, how can you say, it's a lot of slow speed corners leading into more slow speed corners, which just makes it very, very technical, right? Have I broken too late? Nope, we can make that. Oh, okay, we broke a bit too late, yeah. But yeah, this one is very technical because it's slow speed, the lines, you can take multiple different lines, but also, like, throughout a stint, this section is super hard on the tires, like, especially the rear tires, and also a bit the front, but mainly the rears because of these slow speed traction zones. Then into this high speed. It's just a very technical and very varied track, COTA. It's a lot of different corners, and that makes it quite technical and difficult. I mean, I like COTA. I've always liked COTA. Not saying I found it easy, but I've always liked it, right? Because it's technical, it's difficult, and it's just a fun track to drive. Down through the S's. Oh my god, alright, a little slide. A little bit too aggressive of a direction chase there. We don't want that. This is a very fun combo, no? Like, of course, COTA in the fun track that is the Alpine. I've done a couple laps here. The balance is actually pretty good in the Alpine. Like, balance-wise, driving-wise, it doesn't feel like that hard of a car to drive, if anything. Like, it feels pretty balanced. It's not too understeer. It's not too oversteer. I had a snap oversteer, of course, in the SS, but that was just me trying to push the direction change a bit too much. But in terms of the balance, it feels like a very balanced car from my first impressions, from my first couple of laps. I think maybe the only point where the Alpine sort of feels a little bit off maybe some of the other cars is like the low speed rotation on the entry. Like, these corners right here, it feels hard to sort of get turned in. You see there, it just feels like it kind of takes a bit of a long time to properly get turned in. That could also be setup changes, you know. Maybe a little bit of an adjustment in driving style with a car like this compared to maybe some of the other ones. But I think it's kind of good, right? Because at least it's not very sketchy and giga oversteery, and it's not like that understeery either when you get down to like the things of it. It's very reasonably balanced, I would say. Now, jumping into another car that we have added in this DLC is the Isotta Fraschini. Now, unfortunately, this car does no longer race in real life. It did race in the WE series for a bunch of races, but unfortunately, it is no longer on the grid. So this is one of those examples of a car that is now in sim racing, but no longer in real life, which is one of the cool things about sim racing as well, is that we are able to drive cars that, of course, are no longer here in real life. Now, I'm looking forward to this because I do think this will be a somewhat different driving experience to the Alpine. And already now, on the first couple of corners, I can say that it very much is. Because, holy damn, it is very sensitive on the steering. Especially compared to the Alpine that I just drove, this is a lot more sensitive on the steering. You can see there, just out of my reflector into that corner, I turned in a lot earlier than what I needed to and kind of needed to turn out, right? So I just need to adapt my driving to having this more sensitive steering. It's like the steering range is less, right? I'm barely turning my wheel there. I didn't turn it 90 degrees before actually sort of turning out again, right? So some people may like this sensitive steering, some people may not like it. That is all personal preference. But through a corner like that one, it feels quite a bit better than the Alpine. It feels like it has more rotation. It feels like it has better rotation than the Alpine. It is not as understeer, low speed, you know, the front end is sort of there. At least until now. I'll give it some more laps, and then I'll get back to you with what I think. And my first initial impressions of the car is that it doesn't reflect the real-life car's pace. So, let's just be honest, the real-life Isotta was not the fastest car. It was very reliable in 24 on Le Mans, but it was not on the pace. It does not look like this is the same. Like, it seems to me that compared to what time I did in the Alpine, I'm actually faster in this car. But that might just be the personal preference with me liking the little bit of turn-in in the Alpine. And I'm sure if I went back and did some more laps in the Alpine now, I would also have the more experience on the track and probably be able to match this. But it's just that turn-in, the rotation, especially the low speed, with this car that makes it feel pretty good to me. It is a little bit tricky in high-speed corners because it can be a little bit like snatchy, it can be a little bit oversteer, it kind of wants to snatch on you in high-speed corners, but just that low-speed turn-in that it's got really just makes it easy to find time in the low speed. Where the Alpine, I think for sure, has a big advantage in the high speed, right? Because look at this, I feel like I'm constantly here just trying to prevent it from snapping. That feels like that's the main sort of thing currently holding me back through the SS section. On top of that, over this curb, if I cut a bit too much out of it, which I did on one of the laps, I actually end up bottoming out, which I didn't have in the Alpine. But that could also just be hitting it slightly different. But honestly, I might drive this in some races. The only thing I need to get used to is this. There I actually did it fine, but the other laps I turned in way too early because of the sensitive steering. But overall, first impressions on this update is that it's very, very nice. The Isotta is one thing that I really, really like, because it was a fan favorite, and as we talked about, unfortunately he's no longer driving in real life anymore, which is unfortunate, but that we now have something like Le Mans Ultimate, which has sort of revived the Isotta. You know, we have a game, sim racing game, where this car is, and that is really, really sort of nice. And on top of that, it doesn't drive like terribly, and actually has some fun driving characteristics with the sensitivity. It's a little bit different to the other cars. As I said, it has characteristic, and it's actually pretty fun to drive. I think this is something that's really, really great. I've got to say that my first impressions on this update is that it's very nice, and I really, really appreciate it, and I'm looking forward to seeing what else the Le Mans Ultimate might have in store for us. Now, if you enjoyed this quick look at the update, make sure to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.